I have a really great memory of, as a child, of running around my grandmother's garden. She lived in an old railway cottage. I think it was a Victorian railway cottage, and it had a lovely bit of land. And at the end of the garden was a railway track, which obviously was years and years it had never been used. It was all overgrown with flowers and weeds and daisies and things. And at the end of the track was an old bridge, and we used to run down the track, always looking behind us backs just in case there was an old train coming. You never know, even though it was never going to happen because it was all overgrown. And we'd run through the bridge, and like shouting, and it would be echoing, and sometimes the bats would fly out, and it was all overgrown. And it was like a magical place for a child to play and run. All the flowers and the butterflies, and we felt already grown up because we were running safely. We were running all around this track, and it was like we'd escaped. And beyond there were fields, and you can always remember running through the fields, touching the tops of the corn, because you're only so tall, and you'd see the poppies and the daisies and the corn, and you'd run through it, touching it all, and hearing the birds would fly up, and the sky would be blue, and the noise of the birds singing, and that smell and energy you'd get from the fields and nature, and the wind moving all the corn like it's dancing. There's so many nice memories, and all those things, looking back, they're all things that can influence paintings. Very often in a lot of my paintings, I often put corn. There's probably grasses, see, all in here. Look, corn sheaths there. And it's, and look, and look, I don't know, actually I don't know I'm doing it. I think when I'm putting all these corn in, I think I'm not aware I'm doing it. It just seems to naturally happen. I went to Whittingham Clumps, and did this painting. Now it's a bit more bushier, but I wanted to show how it used to be. And there wasn't really any corn around, but I've still felt the need to put corn in it, which is weird, really. But artists are weird. And of course, yeah, there, look at all the corn in that one. In this painting, I think I tried to make it a bit more modern, so that you've got this sort of simplistic feel of the poppy leaves, and then the movement of the poppies. But you want to go further and further back, and you get that huge glow of red in the distance. In the wind is always moving, and you just want to sort of like submerge yourself in colour. What do you think's over that hedge? Probably more fields. It just goes on forever. I've always had an interest and a fascination for animals and wildlife, even as a small child. And I can remember there was a lady who had an animal sanctuary not far from where my parents lived. And she used to rehome animals, save animals that had been injured or abused. She'd get foxes in, parrots, birds, all sorts of different birds, deer, peacocks, snakes, everything you can imagine. I phoned her up, and I went to see her on a Sunday morning. My father dropped me off, and I spent a couple of hours there looking around and looking at all the animals, and she was talking to me about them, and the doorbell kept ringing, and she would totter off to open the door, and there was a kitten, or somebody had dropped some money of a donation or something. And she obviously sort of sussed out that I was very enthusiastic. She had a lot of helpers that used to help throughout the week and at weekends. But anyway, at the end of it, she more or less offered me a voluntary role, and I was only 10 or something, 10 years old. So I used to go on a Sunday morning from about 9 till 1. My dad would drop me off. My mum would be cooking the dinner. Then they'd collect me at about 1 o'clock, and I'd go home and have dinner. And I did that for years and years and years, all voluntary, just on a Sunday, for many, many years. And only a couple of years ago, she died, and she was, 103. I think she was 104. She actually died. But all that time, I was still in contact with her up to then. And that really sparked a deeper fascination, I think, for wildlife, because I was there in the middle of an aviary of birds, or in the middle with, you know, where there were foxes. We had a three-legged fox that was caught in a trap and had to have the leg amputated, but there was nothing wrong with the fox and it could never be released. So it became like a dog, really. And the fox used to run around quite happily. She was called Fiona. But being so close to those sort of animals was amazing, because I could make sketches and I could take photographs, and I could feel and look into their eyes, and that used to be really great reference going home after there and just thinking, oh, today I'm going to paint some foxes or whatever. And you know, as a child, you know, that's how things grow and develop, and you start to experience. It's sort of what really started my fascination for wildlife and flowers and anything nature. You know, stones, feathers, leaves. Everything is a beautiful colour, texture. All those elements you can take and you can put into a painting. Paintings are obviously subjective, so it's an artist's interpretation of how they feel. Those items can be transported by paint onto a canvas. Obviously, I got to about 17 and I couldn't go on a Sunday. You know, I was at college, and then you start to get jobs and you work and commitments and going out, and all those things happen. But I always stayed in contact with her. I always helped and supported her when I could. And I used to see her all the time. You know, she moved to the south coast, and once, twice a year, I'd drive down and see her, and we'd have lunch or dinner or whatever. You know, she was getting really elderly, but really incredibly fit. You know, even she was the oldest lady in the world to do a skydive off the Spinnaker Tower in Southampton. She was for her 100th birthday, and that was all filmed, and I was there for that with the film crew. So she was an amazing woman, but she always was fascinated and loved the fact that I painted, and she had several of my paintings framed on her wall over the years as I progressed, as things changed. And that was really nice to go and see. And you know, we'd be chatting, and I'd say, oh, do you remember when I painted that, or do you remember that animal we had? And I painted a picture of it. So all these things sort of do a full circle, really, don't they? From starting so young, walking in there with the fascination of animals, to starting to paint and draw them, and then decades later still being in contact and seeing paintings from different times of my life that I'd given her, and how you progress, all hanging. And that's a really nice thing, really. One of my dreams as a child, when I was drawing all those years ago, was to illustrate some books, and I did actually have the opportunity to. So there's a lot of illustrations in all of these books. This one is about a naughty bat called Baby Bat, and he gets up to all sorts of antics, and always has a rather difficult time of it all, but he always comes out fine. I did The Boy Who Lives in the Snail Shell. He wants basically some excitement in his life, and he lives in a snail shell with his best friend, and he ends up going in a spaceship to the moon, which is really fun. And that's all, again, lots and lots of weird stories that are in my head. Cassandra Koala visits the farm, which is when I was in Australia and I was with the koalas. It was really nice to do a book. So Miss Lisa Lendo in Portuguese means book, and she drives a bus, and it's a rather younger looking me in the famous egg chair, and then she travels around with her bus, trying to make everybody read. So, and her dream comes true in the end, because she's going around, and there she is on all her pile of books. The Adventures of Baby Bat, and I was in Waterstones doing book signings, and then this was on there. It's a bit faded now, and this was on the counter, and then all the children were queuing up to have their books signed, which was really sweet. And then we had colouring in pages, so there was different adventures from the book. It's good fun doing the books, but it's a lot of hard work. There's over 250 illustrations in this book alone, which is a lot when it's going backwards and forwards to the publisher for sign off and then changing. And it's because I write these books as well, so there's a lot of work goes into them. But very often, you know, you do something in it and you're painting and a memory comes back to you, or a smell. And of course the smell isn't here, but it's in your mind, or a sound, and it transports you back. And I think that's what I try to get in my paintings as well, where if someone looks at one of my paintings and they get a smell in their mind, or a sound, or an emotion, or an experience, they're probably tapping into something that I had already gone through. You know, they're getting a similar experience. It's not just a painting on a piece of canvas that's just flat. You know, sometimes there's lots and lots of stories and meanings behind that, and emotions, and little sort of gateways into the artist's being. And a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people just look at, oh yeah, that's a nice picture, that'd be nice, it matches my curtains. You know, sometimes there's so much more to art than a wall filler.